Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hybrid Livestreaming Insights from Industry Experts session. We put together this panel of industry experts that I'm sure are going to thrill you with their actionable insights that is going to enhance your live stream experience. Our panelists include both Cadmium and Cadmium clients. It includes Mike Nussbaum, Project Manager for Livestream Team from Cadmium, Katie Freeman, Director of National Conference Education Initiatives for the American Academy of Pediatrics, Natalie Gabriel, Director, Meeting Services, Infectious Diseases Society of America, and Joe Christensen, owner of Blaze Streaming Media. And I'll turn it over to Mike Nussbaum. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Really appreciate you being here. And real quick, I just want to give a shout out to the virtual audience. They've been outstanding. They've been really actively watching the event. So Todd, if you wouldn't mind, if we can do a wide shot, I'd love for all of you to just, wave, just say hello. We got a virtual audience out there, and those are real people. They're hanging out with us. They're contributing. It's been really cool to have them. And, this has been a really exciting conference. This has also been really well run for all the people on Cadmium that have been managing, but also our partners at Cogent. So I also wanted to give a shout out to the guys in the back. Everything's been smooth from the stage to the live stream and everything around all of the room. So we're really happy with how everything's going. And so for this topic, it's live streaming. I'll just introduce myself really quickly, and then we'll get into the panel. Mike Nussbaum. I've been with Cadmium since, let's say, March of 2020, and something happened there that changed the world. And so I was a mobile app project manager for about 1 week. I went into the office for 1 week, and then everything imploded, and then all of a sudden, Cadmium had to change what we did. And so I was the second member of what became a huge team to support the demand for live streaming. And I see a lot of familiar faces in here, and it's great to, have everybody back together, because I know a lot of you just got to the point where it was fatigue, and I want this thing to go away. And it's been interesting because a lot of you have been coming back. And we're going to get into all the details here, but before we do anything else, I'd love to introduce the panelists. And first of all, I just want to introduce yourself, where you're from, and your role in your organization, and maybe your recent experience with live stream, just a general thing.
Sure.
So,
Katie Freeman, Director, National Conference Education Activities with the American Academy of Pediatrics. We started live streaming in 2020, probably with everyone else that wasn't doing it to that point, at least. We have continued our live stream through hybrid. We came back in person in 2022, and we have about 15,000 attendees at our national conference.
great.
I am Natalie Gabriel. I am Director of Event Operations and Attendee Experience at the Infectious Disease Society of America. We have a joint meeting with 5 organizations, ID Week. We had 2, I'm going to say mediocre experiences with live streaming in 2020 and 2021, and have been streaming with Cadmium since 2022, and we continue to stream our content with Cadmium.
All right, thank you. All right, over to Joe.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Joe Christensen. I'm owner-operator of Blaze Streaming Media. We are a production company that has been focused on the virtual audience for, I hate to say it, but 18 years now. And so our entire focus is really coming into an event such as this and working alongside your audiovisual vendor to deliver a virtual product, whether that be live or hybrid or recorded or content capture, anything like that. But our interests are in how do we take an event such as this and engage a remote audience.
Great. All right, well, thanks. Now you got to know everybody. What we want to have here is an open conversation, so don't forget, on your apps, just dial into our session, look at the bottom, Q&A button. Everybody at home, we'd love to hear from you as well. Any comments in the discussion tab. And myself, I've been in the back chatting with the virtual attendees, and it's just been great because we've had a great dialogue the entire time. So why don't we just start out, what we're going to do here is just kick it off with recent experience as far as what have you found has been, let's say, your main benefits from your live streaming experience and offering it to your clients? So.
Yeah. So I think one of our big benefits of live streaming, there are many, is that increased reach. So we are reaching potential attendees that might not be ready to make that full investment in traveling to our event in person. And hopefully we can convert them from potential attendees to virtual attendees to in-person attendees. The other part of that is accessibility. We are ensuring access for attendees that, for financial reasons, family reasons, visa reasons, job reasons, cannot travel, but they can still participate live and access the same information that our in-person attendees are getting. They can ask Q&As through the app. They can be a part of the discussion and really have as robust an experience as we can give them. The other big benefit we found is that flexibility. So when CrowdStrike puts out an update that takes down every airline on the planet, it seems, we can very quickly reassure our attendees that they can still access our content virtually. And that has to do with the way we handle our streaming and our registration. But it's great. Somebody gets sick on site, we don't have to worry about refunds. They can still access the content.
Great. And I know we had that personal experience here. I know some of our virtual attendees did sign up. They wanted to be here, and lots of things can happen. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so, another interesting thing when we talk about the hybrid or virtual product is actually the value to the on-site attendee. So we frequently will run reports, and it will show that the highest usage of the streaming service is actually in the city where the event is taking place. And so, what we have seen in associations especially is that the people who attend, they're just, they can't get enough of the sessions. They're concurrent. This is scientific material that they're, very interested in. And so what do they do when they get back to their hotel room at the end of the day? They'll actually log on to the event and watch sessions so that they can, frankly, be prepared for discussions tomorrow. So I think one of the things that gets forgotten when we discuss hybrid is that it's actually a attendee benefit to the on-site audience. And then the other thing to kind of consider is just the extended lifespan of your event. So when we talk about an event and we come together for a few days, we create so much opportunity, so much content. And so what are you doing for the rest of the year to engage your membership? When we create all this content and then we have all these analytics that show us what was popular, you have the opportunity to create kind of, content funnels or marketing programs throughout the year for repurposing all that content. And in the association space, we're seeing people create, enduring product, serve undeserved market, reach out to students and things of that nature. And so you just kind of look at this and you say, all the value that we create in the in-person event, there's just more to offer by doing all the tools that come with hybrid live streaming and content capture.
Yeah, and one interesting thing that we thought about, and I'm curious even for nodding head back, head feedback as far as, up or down. I had this question, and I was curious just for Natalie and Katie's opinion. What we mentioned before as far as your on-site attendees that are maybe just tired from the day and they just want to get back to their hotel room, maybe social fatigue, but they're going into their hotel room to view content from that day. Like, is that a good thing? Because you brought them here, you might have things that you might want to have them participate in, whether it's happy hours, whether it's on-site activities. Like, do you want those folks to have access to content, or do you want them 100% in person? So that was just one thing that I wanted to throw out to Katie first.
Sure. So we don't want them in the room streaming. right? If we're sitting in this
Not here.
room, don't open the live stream, right? It does happen, and attendees are attendees, but I think that whatever makes the content accessible to someone that wants to participate is the best way.
Yeah.
So I have seen my own planning group members sitting in our office streaming something that they should be sitting in the room. But everyone has a busy, active life,
Right.
and there's a lot on site, a really diverse experience in most large or small conferences that if you can expand your reach, that is a positive thing.
And now, any comment about the live stream being an on-site attendee benefit?
Yeah, so we struggle with overflowing rooms. Our content is that good, everybody. It's phenomenal. So our rooms are just busting at the seams all the time. So we will have our staff tell attendees that can't get in the room, hey, you can stream it. We have an overflow room over here, but you could sit here and have a cup of coffee and stream that session. And we've actually designed public space to allow for that. So we've added a lot of lounge areas, tables where people can grab a cup of coffee, charge their computer, and watch a session. And I think it's a great benefit for us on site.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I was surprised to hear that from everybody in advance, so I thought that was cool to share. So as planners in here, so some of you are currently doing live stream events or you might be considering them, we wanted to ask a question for you all as far as what are the key questions that you all should ask as you're planning an event, considerations when considering different options. So I guess I'll throw that to Katie first.
Yeah, so I think the first thought that I have with this is it shouldn't be an afterthought, right? Streaming it requires thought and careful planning. Why are you doing it? Who is it for? These are things that you have to think about. Is it to expand your reach? Is it to maybe have easier accessibility tools like captioning? It's a little bit easier with a live stream, for us at least. Like we've talked about, our attendees on site are using it. Everyone could potentially be using it. And I think when you look at the content that you're planning, one of the things that we weren't expecting out of our first year as a hybrid event was our attendees didn't go to those rooms. We put our most popular sessions, maybe it's a setup for 700 people. 70 people were in that room instead of 700 because people realized pretty quickly, oh, this is going to be streamed, I'm going to go to something else. So thinking through that and planning for that, those are what we've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
So.
I'm getting better each year. Yeah, we're all figuring this out together. So.
Yeah.
All right, Natalie, do you have any comment on that?
So a few key questions is, what are you streaming and why? IDSA, ID Week has made the decision to stream all sessions. It's just for accessibility reasons, and then we provide it all on demand afterwards. And then the second question, the second key piece I would ask myself is, how are we promoting this? How are we ensuring that our potential attendees know that we're doing this? What are we doing? What are we streaming? How are we doing it? And getting that information into their hands so they can make a really educated decision about how they want to participate, whether it's in person or virtual.
Cool. And I'll chime in on one thing with Natalie and her event. When she says she streams everything, she's streaming a lot. It's 15, 20 rooms at a time, over 200 sessions. And while we know everybody can't do that, everybody doesn't have that many rooms or even doesn't want to stream everything because maybe it's just one main general session room that you want to live stream. One of the things that Natalie mentioned that I do think is really important is communicating to the attendees exactly what they get with the registration. Because one of my biggest disasters that I've ever seen in any of these events was when attendees expected to get all of the content and they only had one choice. And it wasn't clear. And we had to do a lot of damage control and some quick changes on the fly. But those are the types of things you want to avoid. So, Joe, you have anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So key questions when you're starting out as an association. The first thing I would just kind of mention is that you're, a technician that is taking care of your physical event is, frankly, very busy with that audience. And so what you want to see is you want to see a team that is dedicated exclusively to your live event. And this could come from your audiovisual vendor or a partner, but you really want to kind of separate the team that works with the in-person experience and the virtual experience. And in some ways, on the client side or your side, if I will, you kind of want to see that as well. It is really hard to focus on the in-person experience at the same time that you are tasked with a virtual audience. They have different needs, there's different equipment, and it's really hard to take care of both. And then, the next thing I would just say is to consider that getting started with this is a multi-year kind of project. With your audience, you're gonna have, it takes a few years, in my experience, for association audiences to recognize that it's available and to start using it. And so you really want to have the idea that, we're going to build this value over time. And so, frankly, the earlier you get started, kind of the earlier it starts to create value for your community.
Excellent. All right, so I just have one thing to add as far as longer term considerations. Since we're at a Cadmium conference, of course, you have considerations as far as what's going to be my platform that I'm using. How is the live stream going to be shown? And I won't get into too many technical details, but one neat thing that's happened in the past year with Cadmium is we had our WarpWire on-demand product that we've been talking about and how that integrates with everything. But we also built a WarpWire Live product. So we have the ability to stream with our own platform, specific as we like to see it, and we've done some really large events with it. And so one of the biggest things to consider when you're looking at a platform is, will this content be available quickly? Do we need to edit it? Are there going to be editors that are going to take days? Because the biggest thing that we've found is that we want attendees to have access to it, maybe that night, maybe the next day. And when I started with Cadmium, the general turnaround time for an audio recording, because it took editing with slides, it was 3 to 5 weeks. And then once we got into COVID mode, it's a lot easier to process recordings. It was 3 to 5 days. And so now what we're finding is it has to be, really quick, within a day or two. And this is the kind of thing that you can talk about with your account manager. You can talk about that strategy, how important that quick turnaround is. But really with WarpWire Live, it's really neat because we have an online trim tool. Just take off the slides before, take off the dead spots in the event, and we can just do it online. There's no laborious editing process. And so that's one more consideration that I'll mention, because historically, I think a lot of associations wanted the recordings to be perfect. They wanted to approve every single one before it went for on demand. And I think at this point, we're just ready to let it all fly. We don't want to wait. And I respect that some of you still do, but I just encourage you that the timeliness is what attendees are valuing more so than the perfection, let's say. But one other topic that I wanted to raise, because obviously this is a big consideration for all of you, is the financial component, because you have a large event to produce. We have a lot of considerations when we were talking about streaming a couple rooms, streaming all rooms. So how can we navigate that budget in a general sense? We won't get into the weeds, but what considerations have you run into? What considerations would you think about going forward? So why don't we start with Natalie on this one?
Yeah, so ID Week streams all of our content. So that's every session, every oral abstract, everything. And because of that, we've decided to price that virtual access at the same as the in-person, right? It's not a diminished experience. It's a great experience. You don't have to travel. You're getting the same access live. You're getting the same Q&A opportunity. So we've decided to price it exactly the same. And that's as much for the attendee. You have two choices, in-person or virtual. as it is for us. We don't have to handle refunds if people want to change their registration type. We aren't doing a mad scramble 3 days before, and we found that it works very, very well for us. We have not gotten any pushback. The other piece, another financial consideration, is sponsorship and advertising. And I will say we don't do enough of this, but there are a lot of opportunities for sponsorship and advertising within the platform. So you can have that platform itself sponsored. You can sell ad space within the platform, which I know Cadmium allows for. You can run ads before sessions if you're allowed to. We're medical, so we can't do some of the cool stuff that other orgs can do. We, for a few years, allowed our sponsors to stream their sponsored sessions from ID Week, and that worked out really well. It's tough to manage sponsors and their streaming, but you can charge a premium for that, right? They're extending their reach of their content. And we also allow our sponsors to provide on-demand content. So they hand over their recording and we put it in our platform, and they'll get 6 months of exposure through our platform.
Great. And Natalie did great with that, because when we were preparing for this session, we brought up sponsorship, and I don't think any one of us was wanting to talk about that, because it is like a labyrinth, and it's really difficult to work with. But I did want to give a shout, because I don't know if anybody here is from in Sponsorship Boost is in the room, but the right side, there you go. So definitely pick their brain, not ours, because they specialize in that, and they've had a lot of success in how to monetize and how to bring some revenue in on the live streaming side. So, all right, so I'm just going to kick it to the next topic. So as far as best practices, and we'll dive through this one pretty quickly, but when the event's happening, what has gone wrong, what... All right, we might need a longer meeting. What has gone wrong? What are your best practices? How do we work with the virtual attendees, and how do we ensure that it's going to be a successful event? So I'll kick it to Katie, because she does have a very successful event.
Yep. So thank you.
Yeah.
So what has gone wrong? So we have learned. How about that? Lesson learned.
There you go.
That adequate staffing, right? Having that Joe mentioned, a dedicated team. It's not an afterthought, right? The live stream is a virtual audience. You have to consider what is their experience. So the way that we have kind of developed that is we have a team that comes on site to our meeting and has an office and watches the stream from that office. So it's eyes on every stream. They are paying attention to the chat. So we do have some controversial topics that we typically don't put onto the stream, but if something were to happen in that stream, someone is there to moderate that. So that kind of gets to engagement. Engagement is really important. We want our attendees to engage on social media. We want them to use the Q&A and use the chat, but there are pitfalls to that, right? We don't want our attendees to go to social media as a customer service complaint location. We want them to come to us. So keeping our eyes on that has become really important. Again, lessons learned, right? Otherwise, I think one of the things that we didn't expect starting in 2020 was the level of faculty communication. Sitting on a stage or talking at a podium is much more natural than speaking in a virtual event. You have to tell your faculty what to do, where to look, what content you can and can't record and put on the stream. So we have to tailor some of our communications. We are not a group that does everything. We have 2 to 3 streams depending on the time of day. So we have sort of this captive audience of live stream faculty that are our hybrid faculty. They get more explicit instructions, where to look, what pictures not to include because they could be more scrutinized for copyright, things like that.
Yeah, so. Definitely. Yeah, and one thing I'll also chime in with, so they do an outstanding job, and when I first met with Katie, I actually pulled up the audience response system and the moderator links from their big keynotes, from their final closing session. I was like, Katie, have you seen this? and it was just great because they had so much positive feedback, and they do it right there. And I can't say, I mean, just because I work with so many different events and there's different approaches or attitudes towards live streaming, sometimes it's left to be a thing that hopefully just runs itself. But what's been great about this conference, again, hey, virtual attendees, is they've given us feedback. They even give us feedback, hey, you know, the live stream's buffering. I wouldn't have known about it otherwise. So we talked immediately with the internet folks here, we boosted it, and they have a better experience. But somebody needs to be watching that. They've been contributing a lot of feedback about the sessions and the chat. And then also, I mean, Vicky and Kelly have been doing an outstanding job with staying on top of the questions, monitoring them as they're coming in, and making sure that they're heard as well. So that's another excellent thing that you all have been doing. So Natalie, do you have anything to add on this one?
I think I want to double down on everything you just said. The other thing is pull together a great team and trust them. So trust but verify. But you know, pick the best vendors you can and trust them. We, you know, like I said, we had two less than wonderful experiences prior to Cadmium, and then when we came on with Cadmium, and that was our first hybrid experience. You know, we had a trusted partner with Cadmium and a trusted AV partner, and it worked really, really well. We let them tell us the best practice and what to do and how to address the issues that come up.
Excellent. Awesome. Jay?
Sure. So as we discussed, it really does come down to the people that are involved. And as best as you can, this should be their core focus or their only focus. One of the things that we have been real successful with is we actually do our monitoring off-site. So the on-site team is really tasked with operating the event and handling all the equipment. But then our team that is monitoring everything is actually housed back in our studio. And the reason for that is they don't have any of that kind of fog of war energy that we all have when we're out on the event. When we come out to the event, is it my internet that's bad or is it their internet, right? And so by having our monitoring team off-site, we have people that are having the exact same experience as a hybrid or virtual attendee. And they're also, frankly, well rested because they haven't traveled to the event and they're not sleeping in an interesting bed and they're not going out late and all the things that we do when we come out on site. So from our operations perspective, it is the responsibility of the remote team to qualify that the event is a success and that everything is working. And then the other thing that I've just learned over time is that it can be a bit noisy with a virtual audience in the sense of are there problems? So working with clients, I will say, you're likely to get a false issue that comes to your attention. And it could even come to you from a very important person like a CEO or a board member who says, we're down, and your blood pressure just shoots way up, right? And so we establish a protocol where we expect these false alerts. And so there is kind of a process when we receive a complaint. And the first step of that escalation is to qualify the issue. And so, we come back, whether that complaint came from an attendee or from someone on your staff, there's just basically a process of evaluating that. And it's not a surprise, it's something we've prepared for. And our first step is to go to our offsite team and say, what is going on? What is your experience? And then we get right back to the project team, the greater team, to say, yes, there's something going on, or no, that's a singular issue. That person needs to, reboot or find better internet. And so kind of walking through the scenarios of what you're going to go through in that week as far as communication plans, so that you are prepared for it and you're not immediately at a full level of stress, right? And so, yeah, I think I can keep going. So
No, you're
stop
good.
there.
No, I'll actually piggyback on something Joe said as far as communication just there, because I had a great experience with a similar event to Natalie's, 5 days. I think it was 66 streams, 66 channels in 15, 20 rooms. Same thing. It was just insane. So we were tasked with this, and we had never worked with Joe before, but the one thing that organization did was they introduced us early, and so we got to know each other. And so as project managers and managing all of this, all these operations, I mean, this isn't a unique concept or anything, but get those people introduced early. I think that's the biggest thing, because Joe and myself, we hit it off, and it's just immediately like, hey, we're partners. And our whole team, when we're working with other companies, we call them partners. They're not, separate AV company. We're all partners in the event, and that's absolutely essential. And so we try to foster that type of partnership, rather than, which I have seen, when everybody's introduced late in the game, everybody's kind of scrambling. I'm just getting to know somebody. We're a month out, and things might not go so well. And then we're playing the blame game, and everything's chaotic, and it's just developing that rapport early, allowing us to just build our own relationship and plan things, and even talk amongst ourselves, and not having to worry them about issues, because we've developed that relationship, because you have enough to deal with if we can figure things out ourselves. So developing those partnerships and relationships amongst all of your folks is really, really a great thing. So, all right, so this is another topic that was challenging for us, but I'm going to raise it anyway, because it's something that we hope all of you can provide feedback on, because it's a moving target, and we're doing our best to move with it, but it's most essential that we hear from all of you on what's important. So how do we measure the success of live streaming? So if we make this investment, I want to know whether it was worthwhile. Should I do it again next year? I mean, those are really essential questions. You don't want to just be throwing money at something where you don't know what that benefit is. So we're gonna dabble in it, and I'll just throw it out to Ian, who's standing in the back. Ian has a separate session specific to analytics where he'll pick your brain and give some additional information. But I guess so far, current state, where are we with that? So Katie first.
Yeah, I would say, and full disclosure, this is something that we are still evaluating, whether we will continue to stream and its place within our content. But Joe, this is going to be the opposite of what you said. But technical performance, whether our attendees were happy, false flags all the time. We all know that, right?
Yep.
But overall, if our engagement is positive, if people seem engaged and happy, if there are not a lot of complaints, I mean, that is worth its weight in gold. Regardless of all the metrics and things, the measurable, that is probably the most, how did the stream look? How did it feel? What were the vibes on the chat? Those are important. So the other is just, what was that engagement? What were people talking about? I consider it a negative thing if people are talking about the stream, right? Mm-hmm. If they're talking about the content and talking to each other and talking about where they're from and shouting out things and excited, that's great. If they're saying, I can't hear, I can't see, or the slides are down, or it's buffering on the chat, that to me is something that we need to look at for the next stream, the next day, the next year, whatever that is.
Right. And I'll throw in one more point about engaging with the virtual audience. We had 2 folks that reported the buffering yesterday. And so even if you don't know what the issue is, I think the key is having that person there that might be in the staff room, they might be in their PJ pants at home. Whatever it is, they say, we hear you, we're working on it. Because if that lays out there stagnant, you don't want that pile of continued reports of the same exact thing. So yeah, I'll kick it over to you, Natalie.
Yeah, so I think this is not something we do a great job of, but we should do better. I think the first thing is going to be to just ask your audience, ask your virtual audience, why are you participating virtual? Is it beneficial to you? Are you looking to become an in-person attendee? Are you going to stay with the virtual, for the time being? What was your experience? Are you watching in real time, or are you focusing on that on-demand content? Because then you can start to tailor what you're streaming. If you wanted to go in that direction, maybe we can stream a little bit less. Maybe we stream more, if that's a possibility. And then there's those advanced metrics. How much of a session are people watching before they leave? Are they going back and watching a session again? Are they watching, if you can tie back registration data to who is watching what, you can really develop a picture of what content people want, right? And I think that would be really useful.
Yeah, and I mean, Natalie has really been helping us develop she asked so many questions that we're like, okay, I think we can figure that out. So she's been really pushing what Cadmium has been doing as far as what's important. And so that's another open call to any of you that are having live stream events. We need to hear, what's important to you. So I guess, Joe, from your experience.
Sure. So the success of hybrid events and working with clients, I'll say that everyone defines success differently, but it does start with that technical level, which is it didn't fall apart. That was successful, right? We're all thrilled when the complaints are non-existent. But after that, you really kind of look to I think a lot of different areas where this impacts your event and your community. And so I rarely do I see oh, there you go, that was the huge value. It's actually kind of fractured to where you have just a number of communities and a number of situations and stories to tell about that value. The first thing that I kind of consider is that on-site attendee who wants more of your content when the show ends. When they go back to their room, they're still engaging with your content. One of the things I pull up is the example of bumping into a colleague, hearing all about a session that you did not attend, and you feel like, oh my goodness, I totally missed out. I don't know why I didn't go to that session. And then you pull it up on your mobile device, you watch it while you're still at the conference, that night, or you pull into a little alcove to watch it or something. And then the next day you make a contact with that presenter or that faculty member because it was important to your life or whatnot. And so we enable those type of situations for the on-site attendee. And then, we talk about kind of providing another opportunity to be a part of this community. Being here in person with all of you, and like last night when we all sat and had a drink and caught up, nothing beats being in person. It's just wonderful. And I have been on Zoom with Mike for like a year, and finally had a drink with him, and it was just fabulous. So, unfortunately for the virtual audience, that's not the experience. In other words, it just doesn't compare to being here. But if I have reasons to be at home, if I can't make it due to travel or family commitments or the office, this is a wonderful second option. Sometimes I call this, the secondary audience, because, they are able to be a part of this event at a different level of interaction. And frankly, I think we're all thankful that that option exists, right? And so, does that show up in reports? It does. But also, as an association, does it show that we're trying to extend our reach and trying to reach people at different levels of either financial investment or time investment? I just think it's good messaging at kind of the overall association level that you have a way to be a part of your community that has less investment. I mean, to be honest, right? Because you just pull up a web page and there you are. So, we look at that type of example. And then when we talk about this value, we just talk about the fact that this research or the content that is part of your event can be repurposed. And so, defining value becomes kind of hard because it just splinters into all these other scenarios and opportunities when frequently, we get asked, what are the stats? And then someone wants to define the value just based on those stats. And it's like, well, no, it's kind of more difficult because it's a community offering and a community tool. I hope that
that's great. And you actually got me thinking of something because when we were chatting before, just before we did this last night, we were talking about on-site attendees that can't go every year, and that, hey, I want to access this content, but whether it's due to budgeting concerns, whether it's, what the association authorizes, or your own energy level for going to the in-person event every single year. That's something that you all mentioned as a way to retain that attendee that isn't willing, able, or the organization doesn't allow them to attend every year. So that was another way that we mentioned that was really great. So one thing that we just wanted to touch on, just like as we wrap up our conversation, and again, anybody in the virtual audience, anybody on site here, if you want to hit the Q&A tab and enter any questions, go for it. But we wanted to just touch on, even though we don't know what the answer to this question is, what is the future of hybrid events? As we see it now, as things are changing, from our experience, from what we're hearing, what can we potentially look forward to as changes? So, you want to take a shot at?
Yeah. So my crystal ball, I would say that inclusion, accessibility, equity are ever important, and the flexibility that a hybrid event allows makes something so much more inclusive. We're not going to step back, right? We're only going to step forward in making a more inclusive environment from events, and this is one piece of that. So the other thing I would say is, I hope, again, my crystal ball, is that live streaming will become easier and more natural as our own organizations change, as our own structures change. If this is something that's important to the organization for accessibility reasons, there is a team dedicated to this, right? There has to be. So that's my...
Cool. All right, Natalie, what's in your crystal ball?
So I am hopeful for an improved virtual experience, right? So, like I mentioned before, if you can tie reg data to an attendee logging in, could you predict what they want, right? They have said that they're really into HIV research. Could you say, you might really be interested in these 5 sessions, click here to add them to your schedule? Yeah. And that would work for the in-person as well, right? It's kind of that Netflix, right? You really liked Golden Girls, you might want to watch Designing Women. I hope for that within our platform, because you could also push out kind of underrepresented content that might be flying under the radar of your attendees, that would match with what they do and what they want to see, but they don't know about it. And then, of course, better metrics. I can keep asking questions and trying to drill down into what does this mean? I think where I struggle is I'm not sure what the question is to measure the success of our hybrid event.
For sure. Well, thank you. That's great. Joe?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm really excited for the first time a client comes to me with this is that, right now we think of all of the event content taking place on site. And I think that in the future, as this becomes more and more a part of our life, I think we're going to have like a virtual track that is attached to your event. And I think that, if you were to think about your event right now, you're thinking of, frankly, rears and seats or, people sitting here. But, what if you had a track of your conference that was virtual first? And this would be for presenters that can't make the travel. And then it would also be for that virtual audience to feel, like they're not secondary, that, that they are thought of first in that. And it could even be things like Zoom sessions to meet and greets and things like that, where we're building content that is, thankfully, thought of as the virtual audience first. What are their unique attributes that we can do to add content to our conference? And then the second thing, which I'm in the planning stages with an association, is they're actually focused, they have some environmental concerns about what their environmental impact. And they're an association that travels between continents, and they're looking at co-location for their event. And we're talking about how do we have an event that is in, let's just say London and New York, and how do we have those communities share an event on the same week at the same time? And I could see all of us just terrified at how much work this sounds like. I mean, but the reality is that it is an opportunity. And so I think we could even see where we go into hub and spoke models where people gather to be a part of an event that maybe the host event is somewhere else. So there's just lots of opportunities here, and I think it's still the early stages.
Sure. All right, so I definitely have more questions, but we'll hand it over to the virtual audience, and anybody in the room, please feel free to continue to ask questions, and we'll definitely take care of them.
First of all, I want to thank all of you. It's been an excellent conversation, and thank you so much for all your insight. There has been, you've garnered a lot of questions here, so I'll just start with the most popular and kind of maybe pick on one or two of you, or just offer all of your opinions on some of these topics that everybody wants to know. The first question was, do you have hybrid sessions in the sense that some speakers are live and some are remote? We find that federal employees can't travel even though they are the expert that we need in our sessions. So can you answer that, Natalie?
No. The answer is no. If you want to speak at ID Week, you need to show up in person. It is a headache.
It is.
To stream in a speaker. And our in-person attendees don't want to watch a video on the screen. They don't. It's not a great experience. It is a headache for everybody involved. So we ask that if a speaker can't attend, that we find a replacement. There are other experts in the field. There are very few situations where there is only one. And it's actually an opportunity for junior faculty to get that opportunity to present on that topic and have their face in front of our attendees.
And if it is somebody that is a VIP or somebody that just can't make it for governmental reasons, you do have other options, maybe do a semi-live pre-recorded session and have folks still there, still asking questions, and that they can respond via text. It's not an all or nothing thing. You can figure out other options to throw in a Zoom square up there. So.
Yeah, we can, we just don't.
Yeah, the option exists. Yeah. We just don't take it.
All right, excellent. Here's another question, and this is more thought-provoking, and thank you, Julie, for this question. What are some unique ways to allow the virtual audience to network with each other other than using the chat function?
That's exactly what Joe was talking about. That's where we have to be creative. And Joe mentioned the Zoom meetings. I think everybody was video chatted to death in those first few years, and I think there was fatigue and burnout and not wanting to see people. But if you do have the option between using chat and then within Cadmium, you can certainly link into any sort of meeting, whether it's a Zoom meeting, whether it's a more interactive webinar style. So with all of the tools we have available to us, it's really easy in Cadmium to, whether it's a live stream or whether it's anything else that you can link to. I mean, one thing that is specific to live stream is it's secure, it's private. Zoom, you do have potentially some concerns about things being shared, but there are so many options that you can bring in and get creative of, because that is a great question.
I'll jump in on that. Just one other idea is that, if your event has the opportunity, having a event host that is virtual. So I've had some clients that will have an MC that is just for the virtual event. And in the event program, you will have an opening session with this MC, and they're kind of just there to warm everybody up, if you will. And they will have engaging questions that require you to answer things in the chat and kind of get that conversation going and boost the energy, and then also feel catered to, because this is the person welcoming you to your day and telling you what's coming up. And then once again, it's kind of a virtual first offering where someone's kind of pulling out that questioning. But frankly, it's usually still taking place in the chat.
Yeah. And just one last comment, just because I think there was this explosion of creativity of engaging that virtual audience, and we had DJs, we had the virtual folks requesting questions, and perhaps there was just a little, like the novelty's worn off. Why even bother with that anymore? So in order to potentially jazz up a little bit, I think that's all of those are great considerations. So great topic.
Yeah, excellent response. Thank you for that, Joe. I'm going to go ahead and direct this one to you as well, because I know we had a conversation about this topic, and it's kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to live streaming, and probably one of the larger costs associated with live streaming is the cost of internet. The question was, how do you manage the cost of internet?
Yeah, absolutely. So internet is, in the US, just unfortunately, I mean, the rates are you notice the number, right? And so talking about this, it really is about making sure that your technical team is involved in that ordering process. So that might be, and should be, like your partner at Cadmium, your audiovisual vendor, and really bring that team together to talk about how do we make this internet order the most efficient as possible. So can, a couple of your vendors share internet? Is the venue price it this way versus that way? And therefore we need to change our order to match the way that they kind of naturally price things at their organization. We have a lot of success in doing kind of a shared VLAN. Instead of, hey, I need 10 meg in every room, you say, okay, well, let's drop a network line in every room and then do a bulk order for the entire event. And then, frankly, within the streaming itself, there are efficiencies within some equipment and things of that nature where you can actually reduce your internet by using some modern codecs and anyways, technical stuff. So, but the point is involve your technical team early with that internet order so that it is efficient across all your needs at the venue.
Awesome. Excellent response, Joe. Thank you. All right, so another question, this is one that I hear a lot, and I think I want to hear a couple of your opinions on this one. do you notice a drop in in-person attendance or registration when going hybrid or live streaming?
Okay. So in 2022, that was our first hybrid event. And I think we had about 22% of our attendees participating virtually. Now, we are unique. We are infectious disease physicians. So guess what? Sometimes they can't show up because they are dealing with COVID or vaccines or RSV or Ebola. So, you know, this is a great opportunity for them. In 2023, I think we were about 15%. So we were getting that in-person attendance back, and I think we are pacing about that again this year. So I don't think we've noticed a huge drop. You know, I think we can look at everything before COVID and after COVID. So I think we're doing well. We're gaining in-person attendees back, but we're also gaining virtual attendees, which I think is the point, right? More attendees in general.
I would say we don't look at it as cannibalizing the in-person experience. The in-person experience is the highest level experience. That is our model. We have a small amount of live streaming that happens to expand the reach. But as we've said, our attendees are in their hotel rooms using the live stream. It is not an either or for a lot of people. They're there and using it. So no, it's also a bit comparing apples and oranges. It's a hard question to answer because it's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic are two very different worlds. But we see a benefit in the live experience and use this as a supplement to that.
Yeah. I think that's important, right?
Yeah.
People do want to be in the room.
Yeah.
I think people do want to show up, and they missed that for a few years. That's why we have so many networking events, and we are designing our event differently so that people, you know, can spend time with each other and network again. So I don't think it's cannibalizing.
I agree with you, and I'll tell a little story about a client that I had, and they say that they're going to try to not live stream this year to see if it gained any in-person attendance metrics or whatever. I said, well, how many virtual, attendees did you have? They said about 1,000. I said, okay, well, would you consider it a success if 250 of those 1,000 showed up in person? Well, what about the other 750 attendees that don't show up in person? You're now excluding them from your program by not offering an option there. So I don't know that that's kind of a successful approach. Obviously, every organization is a little bit different, and you have to look at your own attendee base and what they want. But it just seems to me like you're not serving a portion of the audience that would be served, and I don't think that that's growing the organization or your program. But that's just my 2 cents on that matter. Let me see here if there's any other questions we have. I have one that's a little interesting. It's a little bit long, but I'll try to read it here. This is potentially a big financial investment for associations that are organization-based, where there is less chance of converting people from virtual to in-person. What are the best ways you've seen organizations get ROI that allows them to continue live streaming?
Can you repeat that?
I know. So I guess it's about, for me, when I read this question, it's about, okay, I would think that a younger person or a person that is a student or a single mother or whatever, financially speaking or whatever reasons, they can't come in person. So they may be a virtual attendee for a certain time period and then later on become an in-person attendee. So, how do you cultivate those people that are getting in there virtually to become an in-person attendee?
So for us, we would start by, providing all of our content, right? You are not a lesser or a separate population to us. We are going to give you everything. And hopefully, you'll read our newsletter that comes out every day during our show, and you see pictures and you see social, and you're like, wow, that science was really great, but that in-person experience also looks really great. And when, you know, I can find coverage for my family, or my job allows me to, or I can find the funding, I want to come in person. You know, that's all we can do. I don't know how else to convert them, you know, just keep providing the best service we possibly can and the best product, and hopefully that they can manage it. But we also charge the same amount. So, you know.
Yeah, I think cultivating a fear of missing out
Yeah.
it's definitely been our approach. We have not, while we have communicated with the virtual attendees what they will get, we do not separate our on-site daily emails, any of that. They get pictures of the event from the night before, all of that. In the end, for us at least, this is about accessibility and including an audience that it's not possible. So they might never convert to an on-site attendee, but it's still valuable to include them.
I agree, and I want to take another round of applause and thank the panel today. Thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.